Let's get it. Mike Sempervive here with you for the next hour talking professional wrestling and mixed martial arts. I'm required to say that even though we're not going to be talking about any mixed martial arts on this program. But professional wrestling is something we talk about every single day here on the Sports Byline Broadcast Network. And however you're joining me today, tune in iHeart, American Forces Radio, over-the-air affiliates like the Mightier 1090, sportsbyline.com, Sirius XM 156 via podcast or video streaming on Twitch and YouTube. Just want to say thank you for spending a little bit of time with me today. I'm tired. I broke the Nationals jersey out because they've taken 2 of 3 from the Dodgers. Got the Red Bull ready to go right now. ASMR kids, get ready. There it is for you. Well, nothing happened in the world of Vince McMahon that would put him on the cover of Wall Street Journal or CNN or Variety or To Catch a Predator. None of those things have happened today. No. So Bryan Alvarez is traveling right now in peace. We still have, 53 minutes left to go here in this hour, so you never know what could happen. But things are looking relatively calm on the Vince McMahon front, at least for right now. We'll have to wait and see how many other Wall Street Journal stories come out, what exactly is going to take place on Real Sports and all that sort of stuff. But today, the drama actually goes for the birthday boy, Vince's son-in-law, Triple H. Happy birthday, Paul Levesque, 53 years old. And what did you get for your birthday? A brachial plexus injury to Matt Riddle. I have never heard of a brachial plexus injury, and I've suffered one before. He got a stinger, everybody. That's what they are saying happened to Matt Riddle due to Seth Rollins, and whether that is fully legitimate, whether that is partially legitimate, we'll have to find that out. But one thing is for sure, that match is off SummerSlam on Saturday. Who will his opponent be? We can get into a little speculation on that, as well as many other things that are going to be taking place, including WrestleMania coming to Philadelphia. We'll be back. Wrestling Observer Live.
an image of a person you've never seen before. And that is because they are composed of two Impact wrestlers that are either currently in the company or have been in the company in the past. And you basically have to try to guess the two people.
I might be terrible at this, but I'm ready, yeah.
Let's do it. All right, first one up. Who are the two wrestlers in this photo?
Oh my goodness.
Welcome back to Wrestling Observer Live. My name is Mike Sempervive, and as many of you know already, we do this show for an hour at a time, but if you want us 24/7, you can find us on Twitter. I am at Sempervive. The timeline for this show is at WONF4W. The broadcaster is at Sports Byline USA, and if you love pro wrestling, at Mid-Atlantic Pod. I'm not sure if at Bryan Alvarez has posted any of his adventures today, but you can hear him again tomorrow on this very show with me. And if you can't wait for that, become a member to WrestlingObserver.com/figure4online.com. That way you could become a member and listen to exclusive audio like Bryan and Dave reviewing tonight's AEW Dynamite. And we're going to be getting into that show coming up. But first, I have an ad to read. Did you know Ric Flair was having his last match coming up this Sunday in Nashville? I bet you did. RicFlairsLastMatch.com has all of the details. It will be the Nature Boy teaming up with his son-in-law, Andrade El Idolo, to face off against Jay Lethal and Jeff Jarrett. The weekend gets started with the Roast of Ric Flair on Friday night. The next day, you're going to have panels with Bryan Danielson, Claudio Castagnoli, a Horseman reunion, Bret Hart talking SummerSlam 92, plus meet and greets with people like Paige, Mick Foley, Kevin Nash, and many, many more. It's all a part of the biggest StarCast yet, StarCast 5. Pictures, autographs, convention stuff that you're used to, but also now the addition of pro wrestling, including Black Label Pro on Friday, Game Changer Wrestling on Friday, New Japan Pro Wrestling on Saturday, and, of course, Ric Flair's last match taking place on Sunday. It's an 11-match card, all going down at the Nashville Municipal Auditorium. Tickets are still on sale for only $39. Just go to RicFlairsLastMatch.com, and I will use this as a transition. Okay? Because here's the lineup so far. You know what the main event is. You got Josh Alexander against Jacob Fatu for the Impact title. You got the Impact's Knockouts Championship going on with Jordan Grace defending against Deonna Purrazzo and Rachel Ellering in a three-way. You have Ricky and Kerry Morton with Robert Gibson in their corner against Brian Pillman Jr. and Brock Anderson with Arn Anderson in their corner. Ray Phoenix against Laredo Kid, against Taurus, against Bandito in a four-way. The American Wolves, Davey Richards and Eddie Edwards against the Motor City Machine Guns. Killer Cross against Davey Boy Smith Jr. Ren Narita against Yuya Uemura, who's filling in for Clark Connors as he has got a herniated disc. He announced that this past Sunday. The Von Erichs against the Briscoes. Bunkhouse Battle Royal, which Bully Ray, who is it now? Crimson and James Storm is going to be a part of, and a four-way with Konosuke Takeshita, Alan Angels, Alan Angels, Jonathan Gresham, and Nick Wayne. And you may remember the story that Bryan told you yesterday about Nick Wayne's plane adventures, he and his mother. And good news, he is back in the States. He is back at home in Seattle. He let everybody know this yesterday afternoon, said, I made it back to Seattle. I appreciate you all for everything. Wayne and his mother, for those who have not heard this story, were flying from Frankfurt, Germany to Seattle on a flight where a bomb threat was scrawled on the bathroom mirror. So Bryan Alvarez reported this Tuesday morning on Wrestling Observer Radio. He told the story yesterday on the show. The airline reported that there were 266 people on the flight and ended up getting diverted to Iceland. Everybody got interrogated, but everything worked out okay. No word on that they actually got the person that scrawled bomb on the bathroom mirror, but at least Nick Wayne won his match on Sunday in London. So there was that. Just a crazy situation for him. It's been a crazy year for him, and that's going to continue on this coming weekend where I'll tell you what, Konosuke Takeshita is excellent, and Jonathan Gresham's wrestling game is strong. I don't know if Tony Khan ended up finding that out or he just got cursed out by Gresham. I was a little late to that one with the fallout from Saturday's ROH pay-per-view. But it is a very interesting card. Obviously, the Ric Flair stuff on top is what they're pushing. But when you look at some of the stuff on the rest of the card, it is very interesting. But that's enough of that for now. We got big news. Not that that's, of course, not. It's Ric Flair. He's a legend and everything. But WrestleMania 40 has been announced for April 6th and 7th next year, and it will be taking place from Philadelphia's Lincoln Financial Field. The Link, the home of the NFL, Philadelphia Eagles, and the WWE, the Eagles, Philadelphia Mayor Jim Kenney, and the city's tourism board sent out a joint press release this morning announcing everything. It is going to be the second WrestleMania in the city's history, the first since WrestleMania 15th on March 28th, 1999. I believe that was Rock in Austin, and I'd have to go back and look at the rest of the card, but I don't remember it being very good. I think that was the one that had the Battle Royal on the pre-show to see who would face Owen Hart and Jeff Jarrett for the tag titles, and the Big Boss Man getting hung by The Undertaker in Hell in a Cell. It was a good main event, from what I recall, if I'm not mixing up shows there. So this is going to be much bigger, that's for sure. How many names they call on from the past, I don't know. Jeff Jarrett could stay. You never know with him. He could still be in the mix and actually appear on WrestleMania. In fact, I'm sure he'll appear on WrestleMania. Will he have a match or not? God knows, God only knows. He never had that match against Effie that everybody was waiting to see, Jeff. See if he gets killed with a guitar shot at some point this weekend in Nashville. We'll see about that. But that's it for now when it comes to WrestleMania. There will be more details obviously coming out. They'll hype everything up. Surely on SmackDown this coming Friday, and surely for Raw on Monday. Put all the ticket packages on sale towards the end of the year. I was this close to going to New Orleans, and unfortunately my brother, who we had planned everything with, ended up going into the service, or actually was in the service in the Air Force, and got a call that said, no, you're going to England. So all of those plans went out the window. I've been semi-bitter since then, and plus I'm old, and I just don't want to be arsed, frankly, at this point, to go to a show. But with WrestleMania being very near me in Philadelphia, I may have the excuse to do it. Not sure who else was in the running for this. I know Philadelphia, when it comes to the East Coast, other than Miami, and I guess if you want to consider Atlanta, with the exception of New York, Philadelphia was the only place that was really going to make sense. And they've been the only ones that have been actively pursuing events like that. DC, Baltimore, Boston, it doesn't seem like they have tried to go after WWE events with the same kind of chutzpah that Philadelphia has, especially for WrestleMania. So April 6th and 7th, 2024, that's where that will be. Here's boy. This was and you can read this at WrestlingObserver.com. Citing sources within the creative process, a Fightful report said that assistants on the creative writing team needed to filter the now former WWE CEO and chairman Vincent Kennedy McMahon for, quote, a long time, and that meeting notes were heavily edited due to the aforementioned insensitive language, to calling people the wrong names, to using terms that really weren't socially acceptable. In another part of the report, a former production employee confirmed the long-running stories about McMahon blowing up on the announcers on headsets due to minor issues. The report also intimated from some that McMahon didn't remember some of the things that he'd done creatively in the past, resulting in them being done over and over. So that is a report that came out from Fightful that you can see at WrestlingObserver.com. McMahon had publicly said that he retired from WWE last Friday, while filings with the SEC show that he resigned. To Vince, I'm sure it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. But to those people that are looking at this story, some of that verbiage actually matters. So Triple H in charge, as we mentioned. Now with the headache of Seth Rollins being without an opponent coming up here for SummerSlam. We'll get into that, the New Japan G1, and of course, at some point, the vaunted NXT 2.0 review. We'll be back. Wrestling Observer Live.
Kurt Angle.
Correct, that's one of them.
Just the suit gave him away. Oh my goodness, this beard. Not James Storm, maybe? I don't know.
No, but it is, you're close with the beard though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Gunner?
No, oh, that's a close one too. Okay, I'm gonna give you the answer. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
The other person that we were looking for was Matt Cardona.
Yes. The very, very thick beard. I should have known.
Here we go. Who are the two wrestlers in this photo?
Well, that's PCO.
Correct.
For sure. And oh my goodness, the goatee should be the dead giveaway, but the eyes should throw me off so much.
The eyes are, I actually feel like I see the second person in the eyes. The color of the eyes especially. A little bit in the nose.
Jeez. I'm terrible at this. I can't even guess.
All right, here we go. I'll give you the answer. Are you ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay. The second person was Rhino.
Oh, yes.
You
right.
see it now, right?
Yes, automatically. That's what I said. I'm just going to be bad at this. Jeez.
What two women are in this photo?
Jesus. Deanna?
Deanna, correct. That's one of them.
Yeah, the eyes were a dead giveaway. Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm trying to guess what the hair could be. We need Jeopardy music in the background.
I know, right? I'm like,
I mean, Taryn Terrell?
No, but you were kind of close. The answer we were looking for was Taya Valkyrie.
Oh.
What two people are in this photo?
AJ Styles. Is it AJ Styles?
Yes,
yeah?
That's correct.
Okay, because it could have been Hornswoggle. Oh my goodness. It's just like a haggard AJ Styles. I'm really bad at this. It's the nose for sure, and the eyes that are supposed to give this away. Is that me?
Yes.
Oh, that's brutal. Oh, at least I got one.
That's why I was dying in the background. Back on Wrestling Observer Live, Mike Sempervive here with you. Nationals and the Dodgers just getting started right now. Guy hitting me on Twitter, mentioning Ric Flair's last match again. Please, bro, I'm tired of hearing and seeing about it. They're ad reads, okay? What do you want me to tell you? Do you think the NFL Sirius XM radio show hosts have a personal connection to the woman at the Marriott Residence Inn in room 526 that keeps sending notes about her amenities? No. It's an ad they have to read, and that's what I'm doing here, okay? You know, look, it'll be over after this weekend, all right? Sunday, in fact. It's not like we're the only ones doing this here. They spent a lot of money on this show, so Rick could probably use some of that. So what's it? And by the way, Jim Crockett, apparently, I guess Jim Crockett Promotions, the trademark is going to be reverting over to David Crockett. Right now, it's in the hands, I guess, a 50-50 split between Conrad Thompson and he. I guess it's going to be all his now. I think that's exactly the same thing that happened with the Four Horsemen
trademark that Arn Anderson now owns. When they were able to wrangle that, it ran out from WWE. He was able to get scooped up, and now he's got control of it. So same thing when it goes for David Crockett and Jim Crockett Promotions. I don't know if he'll actually be able to do anything with it, maybe sell some merchandise with the old JCP logo on there. Hey, I might buy one of those things. I'm kind of partial towards Mid-Atlantic Wrestling, if you didn't know. So we'll see about that. But back to the business at hand here, and that Vince McMahon story that I mentioned. Look, he's a 77-year-old man. There's nothing about that surprises me whatsoever. And there was nothing that surprised me about Freddie Prinze's podcast today. Freddie Prinze Jr., the actor who was once a member of the WWE writing team, busted out a new edition of his podcast about wrestling that he was planning on doing a lot more of, apparently, but he has not done one for quite some time. But perfect timing to come out at a time where Vince McMahon steps down, and he had some thoughts about the whole deal, had some thoughts about Nick Khan and Stephanie McMahon. Could those two coexist as a co-CEO, which Dave has talked about it with, I believe it was Garrett, has talked about it with a couple of people, I think, about the fact that co-CEOs usually don't work. So he's got a little bit of insight into that, as well as some of his thoughts on working there and dealing with Vince, including him having no hobbies, because it's been brought up, like, what is Vince going to do now? It's not like he's been Mr. Grandfather and he's going to go home and, like, play with the grandkids and the dog and all that sort of stuff. Is he going to do that? Let's hope so. But I have no idea what a guy that's been that driven and in that bubble for so long is going to do. And to show how much of a bubble that he's in, Freddie Prinze was one time on the plane, on the jet when they were flying, and he was watching Richard Pryor's live on the Sunset Strip, the great comedy performance of Richard Pryor, and Vince actually leaned over to him to ask, "Who's that?" And it's like, it kind of blows my mind that somebody who was as iconic as Richard Pryor throughout the 70s into the 80s, Vince would be leaning over to ask, "Who's that?" But I guess if you never watch any comedy and you never watch any movies, I guess, well, how would you know who Richard Pryor was? But he did have, and this is not surprising either when it comes to Kevin Dunn, he did have some thoughts on Kevin Dunn and the battles that he would go through trying to pitch things. Now, this was in reference to Vince as well, too, but the clip that I'm going to play here is about 40 seconds long, and him talking about initially Beth Phoenix and unfortunately, her being around and on her rise at a time where we were still stuck in the Divas edition, and we were still stuck in that realm where if you wanted to have any TV time for Beth that wasn't just the occasional one-off match, well, we got to stick her with Santino Marella, and we'll do that sort of thing. But, Dom, go ahead and play the clip right now of Freddie Prinze Jr. talking about WWE executive producer Kevin Dunn.
More than anything, and then this other
mic's off.
Got the sense liked wrestling at all. Like he was trying to turn it in more to like the NFL or like Tyson versus Holyfield, which is cool, man. But it wasn't like wrestling. And so you just see this room of like, I don't know, there were probably 20 writers when I worked there. And it was just 20 writers throwing sand against a tidal wave. Bro, you could pitch for 20 minutes and Kevin would be like, "Well, I don't think she's pretty." And all of a sudden, like 6 weeks of story were just gone. And it's like, "Yo, B, what?" "Well, yeah, our champ has to be pretty." It's like, yo, did you think Mankind was pretty?
So there you hear Freddie Prinze. That is on his Wrestling with Freddie podcast that you can find anywhere that you find podcasts, including this one right here on Apple, iHeart, Spotify, all those sorts of things. He does about 45 minutes or so kind of talking about everything that, again, with his friend Jeff Dye, and they just kind of talking about some of the situations there. It's a very loose, light thing, but I got such a kick out of that, and there were people that were, jumping up and down this morning on Twitter when he had said it, when the thing was released, and it's like, well, are you surprised at all? That is exactly what people have been saying about Kevin Dunn for a long, long time. And look, it's television. It's entertainment. Aesthetics matter. They absolutely matter. They do. But like Freddie Prinze noted, we're not ever talking about Mankind's looks. We don't talk about Dusty Rhodes' looks all that much. Yeah, we made fun of the splotch and all that stuff, but we didn't say that, well, he's had Bell's palsy and he talks with a lisp and this, that, and the third. And no, I don't think would be a good champion. Ric Flair's nose is too big. He couldn't be a good. But the women have had to suffer with this for a long time. And they may still have to continue to suffer with this. And when you look at a lot of the people that Johnny Ace has brought in and at the time of heading up talent relations and his idea on people, you see how, for the most part, Vince has treated women's wrestling for a long, long time. And Freddie Prinze on the show gives a lot of credit to Stephanie McMahon. I know a lot of people think Stephanie McMahon, because of how she is, gets way overpraised by the mainstream for that. And that's true. She does, but from Freddie Prinze's point of view, she was one of the only ones who would try to get up there and try to fight the fight. But as he notes during the podcast as well, there were some days that it just wasn't worth fighting that fight with Kevin Dunn and her father, Vince McMahon. So now that he is gone, we will see how things change. Things have not changed production-wise all that much. As Bryan noted yesterday, the 79 billion gazillion camera cuts that take place on Raw and on SmackDown need to stop, like, now, today. Maybe before All Out, when you're going to have an NXT show. Did you hear about this one? Competition never die. Brandon Thurston of WrestleNomics reported yesterday that NXT was going to be holding a premium live event on September 4th, of course, airing on Peacock, or if you're out of the country, on the WWE Network. Funny enough, same day that AEW is, of course, running All Out in Chicago, Greater Chicago, Hoffman Estates, Illinois. WWE has still not confirmed a date yet, but Thurston did report yesterday that the next NXT television special would be called Heatwave and take place on August 16th. All of that came to pass on last night's show, so don't worry, you'll hear all about that later. So WWE already has one event taking place during Labor Day. It's WWE Clash at the Castle, taking place on Saturday, September 3rd in Cardiff. A match between Drew McIntyre and Sheamus on Friday's SmackDown will determine the challenger for who is going to face off against either Roman Reigns or Brock Lesnar at that show. So I could see them doing, the day-night doubleheader thing, since I'm not exactly sure. I got to double-check what time people on the East Coast and on the West Coast of the United States will be able to watch Clash at the Castle. But if you have that on at, let's say, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern Time, noon Pacific, you go and you have AEW that night. Look, anybody that's going to watch AEW is going to watch AEW. Anybody that's going to watch NXT is probably going to watch NXT. So I don't really have a problem with that whatsoever, with DVRs, and especially with Peacock, with the on-demand searching and functions and all that sort of stuff. I'm not sweating this at all, and I'm not surprised by it at all. In fact, I would tend to expect these types of things. It can be a little annoying, especially if they do these things on a Sunday. But on Saturday, for somebody like me, I'll never complain about it, because it actually makes everything a whole lot easier to try to get gathered up before we come back on the air on Monday. So I'm all for this. I have no problem with it whatsoever. Now, all of this news that has been taking place with Vince stepping down and Triple H being put in charge of creative, no surprise, Raw's ratings ended up being up on Monday. They averaged 1.9 million viewers and swept almost every key demographic on both cable and network TV. They drew a .50 between 18 and 49s. As a result of that, it was the second place show on all of television and actually beat the shows on Telemundo. It beat Univision. The only thing it did not beat was The Bachelorette on ABC, but killed everything else. Raw's 18 to 34 demo was the third on television behind The Bachelorette and one show on Univision, but again, another strong performance. What ended up being a little bit of a surprise, though, is a 15% drop in viewership between hours 1 and 3, which has not really been the case as of late, and it is a little bit of a surprise just because Roman Reigns and Matt Riddle being in the main event for what it did for SmackDown when the show where Vince actually came back after after all the stuff broke, that did a great number. This, not so good, but then again, it was also a 3-hour show. 2.02 million viewers first hour, 1.97 million the second, and 1.71 million in the third. Got the NXT 2.0 review coming up and much more. Wrestling Observer Live.
When I was in my early stages of my fights with Cody, there was a moment where on the stage I gave Cody a knee. He fell down, and I told him that this was no longer his house, but it was the House of Black. And then fans, because the camera audio was on when I said it, fans started chanting House of Black. And at that point, it kind of got me thinking. And then later on, it was a hashtag on Twitter. Though I am clearly not the biggest social media lights in the world, it caught my attention. And I started thinking, and I always had ideas, because even this installment of what is the House of Black is something that I did over 13, 14 years ago. With similar stables with like the Sumerian Death Squad and stuff like that. But now doing it with all the expertise that I have.
Back on the show, Wrestling Observer Live, Sports Byline Broadcasting Network. Mike Sempervive here with you. This Red Bull let me down today. Like a full Greg the Hammer Valentine here. 20 minutes to warm up. And by the time we get into the action, the only thing we got really left to talk about is the NXT 2.0 review. Hope you're happy, Bryan Alvarez, wherever you're driving right now. The show opened with Zoe Stark. Now, I like Zoe Stark. And Zoe Stark is... I'll put it to you like this. I don't think if you gave Zoe Stark over to Kevin Dunn, that he would know what to do with her, or that he would think much about her, or that he would care much about her. Because she doesn't look like a Playboy model. She doesn't look like a fashion model. She just happens to be somebody who's incredible shape, great tan, looks good, aesthetically fine to me, and can wrestle a little bit. Her, Mandy Rose. But hopefully some changes happen because, again, when you're as good as Zoe Stark, you deserve opportunities. And there's always going to be the Roxy who comes in and you just look at them and you go, my God, she's a star. She's already picked all this stuff up. You know, it's like a lot of other, like the MJFs and people like that who have been able to pick up things from a very early age and impress. You know, and there's always going to be your show ponies that are brought in, you know, because they look good and they may be athletic a little bit, but those people need somebody to work with. And I look at Zoe Stark and I don't get the same feeling that I had with Becky Lynch, because Lynch had a lot more experience. I was a lot more familiar with her with Shimmer and all the stuff she did before she retired and then ultimately ended up coming back. But I can see if Zoe Stark sticks around there, she's not going to probably get to that Becky Lynch type of height, but she can be, as you have your Sashas and you have your Charlottes and you have some of that, somebody who's very consistent and who always puts on good matches and is always somebody you can rely on. I think that could be Zoe Stark. Now, she's working with Cora Jade and Toxic Attraction. So basically, long story short with all this, Zoe Stark came out. She was super hyped up. She addressed the crowd, talked about her injury, and then Cora Jade appeared on the top of the set to complain that Zoe stole her moment, as everybody does to her, and they went back and forth for about a minute before Toxic Attraction sashayed themselves out, and Mandy Rose bragged about being the 4th longest reigning NXT Women's Champion of all time. Awesome. She wanted respect on her name. Zoe challenged her for tonight, but Gigi Dolan accepted instead. Grayson Waller then cut a promo as we were going to break, called all the fans at home fat and lonely. When we got back, Tony D'Angelo was praising his family, but also reiterated to Joaquin and Cruz that loyalty is an ongoing trait, as they have an 8-man coming up tonight against Diamond Mine. Still don't know what happened to Santos Escobar. We have heard no updates whatsoever. We don't know if they actually called him at the hospital. We don't know if they've reached out to him. Nothing. So we'll still have to see, I guess, which direction that's going to go. Frankly, I'd prefer Santos Escobar being on the main roster as a way to go, but, you know, we may be hoping for too many moves too soon. Grayson Waller faced off against Wes Lee, and Waller was extra Waller. He's a guy that is going to be on the main roster. Unless he does something stupid, that guy is going to be on the main roster one day. And the match was fine for where the thing ended up going. Went through one commercial break, came to an end when Waller, he knocked Lee off the top rope and then starts distracting the referee. Lee's pulling himself up near the fans, and there's a guy there wearing a full sweatsuit, a hood that is pulled down over his head. He's got a hat on and a black trench coat. In Florida, in July, in that building, he suddenly stands up, and he's got on boxing gloves. To make it more ridiculous, he hits Lee in the back of the head. Lee drags himself back into the ring, but ends up eating Waller's stunner, takes the L. Afterwards, the hooded man pulled everything off, got into the ring, and revealed himself to be Trick Williams, so that feud is continuing. Then it was time for Mackenzie Mitchell to talk to the Schism, Joe Gacy and his two dudes, the Dyad, Rip and Jagger, who have offsetting wacky contacts in their eyes. And Gacy wants to recruit Cameron Grimes because he feels like Cameron needs a father figure. I don't mind seeing Cameron Grimes and Joe Gacy wrestle. This storyline, and Grizzled Young Veterans, they were a lot more fun driving around in that golf cart, you know, looking back now than what this feels like. 4 women were talking backstage after that. I know one of them was Ariana Grace because she was watching herself on an iPad and complaining about Indy Hartwell, who happened to just walk in. And Grace is a former beauty queen, and Indy doesn't have time for all that, so they're going to have a match later on. Apollo Crews against Zion Quinn. Quinn may look the part, but he is a long way from being primetime, and I think they know that as well, too. Lots of communication that was obvious here, and at times things were a little bit awkward, like me trying to talk today. The match went for 5 minutes and 42 seconds, but it really did feel a lot longer than that, and ended with Crews choke slamming Quinn for the win, who, you know, again, the visual of this, and I don't care how strong Apollo Crews is, 2 inches shorter and like 40 pounds lighter, and to see him just lay out Quinn, You know, that was something. So I don't know exactly what the plan is here for Quinn, but he keeps talking a lot of nonsense and getting knocked down a few pegs. So we'll have to see what goes on there. Mackenzie then talked to Toxic Attraction about Zoe Stark. When Saray walked up, she said she wasn't in the Battle Royal because she was in the UK. She said she also wants a title shot, but then Toxic Attraction blew her off so they can make their way back to the ring. Before we got that match, we got a video package with Solo Sikoa cutting a promo on Von Wagner about next week's Falls Count Anywhere match. The aesthetic on this I thought was very, very well done. We've seen a lot of promos with people out there just walking around in the dark, cutting promos. Everything about this I thought worked, and the fact that Solo Sikoa, I mean, he looks like an Uso, talks like an Uso, acts like an Uso. He's got the presence of an Uso. One day that's going to pay off very well, hopefully for everybody involved. We did then get Gigi Dolan and Zoe Stark. Short match that Stark won with her modified GTS. They could have gave this match more time. JC and Mandy tried to jump Stark afterwards, but then JC got sent packing with a super kick, and then when that happened, Mandy ran away up the ramp. Stark stared him down, and as she did that, Cora Jade jumped up from behind with a kendo stick and wore her out until Roxanne Perez made the save. She was hitting her a few times, like knowing that stick wasn't going to break like the skateboard did. She wanted to get some of her weapons heat back, and she certainly did that on the back of Zoe Stark. JD McDonough then arrived in the building, and he's got a ticket to be a fan, but then still entered through the employees-only door as the show went to break. When we come back, Wendy Chu is having nightmares about getting beaten up and losing to Tiffany Stratton. She has one moment of bliss as she thinks about her pillow spot during the Battle Royal. But then things get dark again as she remembers losing and hears Tiffany's voice. What does all this mean? It means Wendy woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Naturally. And she's going to get ugly, she promises, with Tiffany Stratton coming up. It is what it is, but I don't want to say Wendy Chu is growing on me. But of all the goofy, stupid things, I guess I'm just beaten down enough. Tiffany Stratton, I think, is going to be a star. And as bad as some of this stuff is, I don't know. It's a lot better, I'll say this, than Alba Fire and Lash Legend, okay? That's where I'm putting my stand on, and that's where I'm marking my flag, and you're not going to be able to get me to shake from that. McDonough, they're killing this dude. They're absolutely killing him. He cuts a promo starting from the stands. He talks to a fan about choking on popcorn that gets stuck in their trachea because, you know, he knows all about the human body. And he goes over to the ring announcer to tell us the damage that a ring bell hammer can do to a finger. And then he introduces himself to Alicia Taylor, but he doesn't do anything to her. But then he goes over to Wade Barrett and he starts shaking his hand. Meanwhile, all cutting a promo very slowly and deliberately, and I'm shaking the hands with Wade, and oh, Wade, all the calcium deposits in your hand from all that bare-knuckle boxing you're doing, it makes it easier to manipulate. And then, of course, Wade's got to sell the handshake. Then he goes over to Vic Joseph and kind of grabs him by the collarbone, and it took forever. It felt like it was in slow motion. It was terrible. But finally he gets in the ring. Braun Breaker, he calls him out. He obliges. He gets to the ring, and it's like, okay, let's see what happens here. Braun says they're going to face off at NXT Heatwave, and that next week they're going to make the match official. And when he does that, McDonough headbutts him. He goes for that pull-in Saito suplex that he does, but then Braun just shoulder blocks him. That's it. The crowd kind of goes, ooh, ah. And McDonough comes up with his mouth bleeding, and he smiles because he likes it. And then the music hits, and we move on, and there was almost no heat. Maybe my ears were deceiving me. There was nothing going on there. And Braun Breaker is going to be a better worker, working with J.D. McDonough, who we know is very good. This character, it ain't it. It ain't it. Get back in your car, go drive back over the ocean again, and hopefully figure this thing out. It's not dyad bad, but it might dyad the same type of death. I should die a death for that one. Anyway, Andre Chase, Bodie Hayward, and Thea Hale. This is where the show picked up for me. They were talking about Giovanni Vinci in the back, and they proceed to get all excited, telling Andre Chase about their adventures in the parking lot last week with Vinci. And as they do, Nathan Frazier walks up and asks to be the honorary flag bearer for the team, in the great tradition of men such as Jacko Victory and Rip Morgan and Johnny Ace. And actually, forget about that guy. That one's persona non grata right now, so we won't speak of him. But Ben Carter, the former Ben Carter, was going to carry the flag a little bit later on for Chase University. Hasn't wrestled since June 10th in Tampa, losing to Carmelo Hayes. So he's only had 4 matches on TV. So we are still got a long way to go in the career of Nathan Frazier, and hopefully they're able to figure out some good matches for him. I think I tell you what, I'll take a feud between Nathan Frazier and Giovanni Vinci, but we get that match was scheduled to come up, after they're done talking in the back, but then we get a set of commercials, then we get Vic and Wade bantering in front of the ring, then we get a video package on the Adventures of Axiom, and then Mackenzie is backstage with Roxy, who's pissed off at Cora Jade about turning on her, but is really pissed off about the fact she threw the NXT Tag Team title in the garbage can. She brings out Alundra Blaze. She tells the story about throwing the WWF Women's Championship into the trash can on Nitro so many years ago. And she announces that next week there's going to be a fatal 4-way for the now vacant championship. Then it was time for Diamond Mine to all warm up backstage. Everybody's getting along. Roderick Strong's getting along with everybody. Everything's good. Then we had a Zoom meeting between Yulisa Leon and Valentina Feroz, because Feroz was supposedly in Brazil, and Leon let her know that they are in the tournament for next week. Sangha walked up, said they can believe in themselves. He's a world-renowned talent evaluator, so he believes they're going to win the whole thing. That leads into Caden Carter and Katana Chance telling Mackenzie that they have a true friendship and they're going to win the titles. That brings Ivy Neidl and Tatum Paxley up to debate that. Elektra walks in. They get into it over what's going to happen between Diamond Mine and the D'Angelo family. And that is where we will hit pause. And I'll give you the rest of the review when we get back from break. Wrestling Observer Live.
Knowledge that I have with, the experience that I've gained over the course of those added 14 years on top of what I was already wrestling, and the success that I had back then, which is ironically the thing that got me noticed to, move towards the United States, etc. I think in this installment, I think it makes a lot of sense to have a guy like Brody King and someone as Buddy Matthews. They have always been intertwined with me somehow, some way. And I presented the idea to Tony. I said, look, this thing kind of grew wings. And if we were to make this an actual existing faction, an actually existing thing, what do you think about Brody King? What do you think about Buddy Matthews? And he was sold on the idea literally instantly. Julia was an idea that sprung up on us as one of the stories was unfolding, and this thought process that we had that certain elements that I do changes people or influences people, and whether or not that is supernatural, I always let people decide, because I, for the most part, actually don't do anything that I would describe as supernatural. I think a lot of what I do or present is psychological, because I find that much more terrifying. The human mind is a terrifying thing, implemented incorrectly, especially. And so we started kind of like messing with this idea of having someone, how do I explain this without giving it away? Having someone thinking that they were influenced because they wanted to get away from something versus actually being influenced, and then in our own way, kind of like, I wouldn't say exploiting that, but using that. And slowly we're moving forward. She definitely has her, she has her homework, and she definitely has to, earn her keep in that regard. And she's working hard, and we keep her on her toes.
Back on the show, Mike Sempervive here with you. This final segment, finishing up NXT 2.0. Did I tell you all the women got to fighting and there were just hair extensions and agents everywhere to break all that stuff up? Indy Hartwell, by the way, defeated Ariana Grace. The less said about that match, the better. Von Wagner and Mr. Stone, Robert Stone, responded to Solo Sikoa's challenge, and Von Wagner overrode Stone, took a shot at Sophia Cromwell for becoming a model. And it looks like, I don't know, again, if Stone's on the way out or not, but Von Wagner is speaking on his own, being on his own. You know, Kiana James's character sucks. She's going to be feuding with Nikita Lyons, but it gave them an opportunity to show Nikita Lyons in several states of undress and bikinis and all that sort of stuff. So I guess yay to that. But the main event was the D'Angelo family defeating Diamond Mine, and D'Angelo pinned Julius Creed after Roderick Strong accidentally hit Creed with a knee. The match was good by the end. Again, this match and the Giovanni Vinci match with Harlem Bravado or with Chase, to me, they were by far the best matches on the show. At the end of the entire thing, after the D'Angelo family celebrated, Alundra Blaze was leaving when Gigi and JC rolled up on her trying to get the tag team titles, but she said no and pulled them away. You're going to have to earn it. And that's how the show went off the air. So I think I don't think I've earned any money today, but I'm not going to be giving any back either. The same way that Tom Lawler should not be giving up any of his G1 purses. And we didn't get a whole lot of chance to talk about that, but I have a feeling we'll be getting into it more tomorrow. Hopefully Bryan has a chance to see some of those matches that have taken place over the last 2 days. And if he doesn't, that's okay, because we got a whole Dynamite to review tomorrow. If you're a member of WrestlingObserver.com and Figure4Weekly.com, remember, Bryan and Dave will be back tonight for subscribers, reviewing everything that takes place. My name is Mike Sempervive. Thank you, Producer Dom. Thank you, Producer John. And I will talk to you again after a while.